This is Link, and I'll be doing a quick run through of Vanguard Princess. This particular version of Vanguard Princess was translated by a company called Igo Manga, I believe is their name, and the funds from this particular version go towards the Japan Relief program. I must admit that this is the first time I've ever sort of done this kind of playthrough for a fighting game, so I'm not sure if I'm going to maintain interesting commentary. But one of the reasons why I like Vanguard Princess, aside from the minor fundraising aspect to the English version, and the fact that it's one of the few Daoshin fighters to get an English release, which I think is pretty cool to be honest, is it's really low execution. Now, if you actually look up online combos and things, you can see a lot of very convoluted combos. However, a lot of Vanguard Princess is a relatively minimalistic Street Fighter 2 kind of inspiration, with just a little bit more of the modern, not chaos, but I think just a little bit more of the variety that you might expect in a modern fighter. Characters are a little bit more willing to be out of the ordinary and not quite conform so clearly to some archetypes. Not to say the character is totally unique, but it's a little bit less Shoto based and things. The art style is a little objectionable to some people, and I totally get why you might have those issues. However, I don't know, it looks nice. I imagine though, if you've seen enough Moe fighters, you're kind of like, yeah, I've had enough of this. Apparently the English version has some censorship that removes some panty shots and things. Honestly, I don't think that matters. If you want to play in online, you're going to have to find the Japanese version as well and put it down. Okay then, maybe I'm quite out of practice. I don't play this game very often. I don't have many friends who really like to participate much in it, which is fair enough. It's a little bit off-putting. It doesn't play as smoothly as some other sort of modern fighters, mainly because it uses a very Street Fighter 2-esque no cancels, so everything's links if you are going to have combos, and there are very few moves with special cancels, I believe, if any. Wow, okay. Think. The character I'm playing is a Rekka character, a little bit like Fei Long if you need a comparison. So she has a Ichini-no-san, so 1, 2, 3. And I am going miserably here. She has a variety of nice cross-up options, and with this assist she can make a lot of the screen quite damaging, which means that she can easily set up a cross-up and cover herself and be pretty safe in the whole process. There's a bit of a parry system. Super system and meter system though in general is pretty simple. One thing I like though is that characters actually use the assist slightly differently, so for the most part I'm pretty awful. I'm gonna try this on normal perhaps so that it's a little bit more interesting. Well, when I say interesting, I mean a little bit less me failing horribly, miserably. Let's try this again. Typically when I go to these games, I'm often a little bit more zoning based than rushdown. I mean, I love my rushdown, but Vanguard Princess's zoning is... no one seems to quite fit the bill for what I would call traditional zoning. This character I'm playing against has zoning tools, but they don't quite... I can't quite grasp the logic for it. Right. Hopefully this won't be me just thrashing people though, but this is only round 1. So as I mentioned, it's a low execution fighter. Though now that I think about what I've watched from other people playing it, it can be pretty high dex if you want it to be. But I really like fighters that don't really pressure you to get a lot of high combo stuff going right away. Just recently I've been playing rather a lot of Skullgirls online, which I love Skullgirls, especially its netcode as an Australian, but it's really nice to play something where, you know, a combo doesn't last more than a few seconds. And you know, but still has the insanity of, you know, a tag team fighter. I really do like the sheer variety of options that an assist generally gives you in these kind of fighters, because the ability to do two things at once really does change your options quite drastically. However, it inevitably will always lead to a larger emphasis on combos, simply because assists will always be able to be applied as extensions. And if they can't be, then all they are is simply a special move, and they don't really function much differently to one. In the circumstance that you only have, you can't use them as combo extenders, I mean. Now, of course, some assists are going to be easier to combo extend with than others, of course, but it's pretty inevitable they're going to lead to that, and the more you make combos the more you make combos exist, eventually you're just going to get more execution. However, I think the price of that execution with the flexibility often provide is generally worth it. They make cross-ups a lot more interesting and a lot more difficult to both set up and deal with, which I think is good. Oh, I was saying before, characters in this actually deal with the assist system slightly differently. So everyone's assists all have the same actual moves, but you'll see down the bottom there's a support gauge. Each character has a fill up differently, and so some characters are balanced around having it fill up very, very quickly, as opposed to some who have it fill up very slowly, but the character who it fills up very quickly for may be able to I'm sort of more prone to have good setups that work around them, which I think is kind of interesting. From what I understand of how balance actually is in this game, that doesn't really work out. Characters who just have more options as a general rule tend to work better. However, as like rogue characters that just for a little bit of play, I think it's pretty fun. Now, if I recall correctly, and I hope that I am, this game was made by a relatively small team of only maybe 1 or 2 people, and they were ex-Capcom staff who worked on Street Fighter 2, and that's art, gameplay, and programming. Voice acting, I believe, was provided by various professional voice actresses, and music, I think, was commissioned or just found and purchased. So it's not entirely by one person, but the vast majority of the work, other than the audio itself, is done by one person, which I think is pretty impressive. Some people tend to think it's also quite creepy, given the art style, but, you know, I don't want to harp too much on about this game's art style. I'm sure if you're going to have an issue with it, you probably would have stopped watching by now. Outside of like the content of the art style though, the actual art I think is pretty good, and character designs are overall actually pretty interesting. A little generic, but they show off, you know, what kinds of characters they are pretty well, and I think in fighters sometimes you can sacrifice a bit of unique design for visual clarity, you know, conform to stereotypes so that people can just look and go, I know what I'm dealing with. She has a bow, therefore she has projectiles. You may notice I'm a big fan of supers on reaction. Anyone who's watching me play Street Fighter 4, or if you've watched any of my other videos Street Fighter 4, you will probably see me doing supers on reaction a lot. I love using meter for the versatility of being able to react to things safely that you normally wouldn't, with, you know, abusing all that lovely invulnerability. So hopefully you don't mind that. Some people think it's very unskillful. I think that it represents a much more useful skill of being able to actually deal with stuff, because I don't like supers just really being extra damage at the end of a combo. That's really boring. Supers can be a lot more interesting than that, and really should be. Oh yes, this game deals with the penalty for being hit around assists a bit differently. So since like Aquapuzzle and a few other Japanese assist fighters, you never actually get to swap to your assist as such, you just have them as like one bonus minor thing. So in order to punish you for using your assist badly, you get penalty, which drops your support meter to 0, and it doesn't fill up for a few moments. Now, you know, every fighter like this I think really needs something like that, because obviously just having assists be free would be ridiculous, or being able to constantly be around. So most tag team fighters have the penalty of course, if you use an assist and it gets hit, it'll take more damage than it usually would if it had just been a point character. I must admit I'm playing this character a little bit spammily at the moment, but I'm being appropriately punished for it. Yui and another girl, Sakura, are actually, I think it's Sakura, are really interesting characters in, you'll notice that they drop leaf petals. They can both convert those into shots. So it makes them rather curious hybrid action zoning characters, which, my word, I love them. If it wasn't for Eri, I'd probably be playing the other of these two characters. It's gonna hit. Good. Oh, one nice little quirk in this is the grass meter down the bottom. So when it, well, not meter, icon. It's basically just a little visual indicator that denotes when you can throw, which I think is really important for games like this, because I think that when you've got tick throws, so not tick throws, forwards and heavy throws, rather than 2-button throws, it can be hard to identify where your range actually is. These kind of systems really help make it very clear visually that you're in range. It's a little bit, it's an extra element that doesn't need to be there strictly. However, I think the benefit of being able to just know I'm in throw range, I can throw, is very helpful. So my biggest issues as a Marvel player that, you know, I just simply don't know when I can throw outside of having to spend rather a long time doing it. And I love Marvel, although increasingly I'm falling a bit out of love with it, and falling in love with Skullgirls. Wow, I'm not going very well at all. Too much talking, probably. But let us persevere. My issue is probably that I'm not blocking anything. And when I do block, I block the wrong height. There we are. And in we go, and I miss. So the assists actually have multiple levels, so of course you can use just a simple level 1 assist, which is just a little gun, or, as I usually spend my meter for, doing the large explosion. Because who doesn't love a large explosion? Yeah, trying too hard for the cross-up there. Not that cross-ups are really terribly effective against computers, it just feels nice using them. One thing that's kind of cool about this character is actually that she has a double down dragon punch, which is a little bit uncommon for these kind of games, although actually I guess in Daojin it is increasingly popular to have it. I guess because on keyboards where most of these games are being played, Dragon Punch is kind of nightmarish actually. Other Vanguard Princess mechanics that I can think of. There's a parry. I think I've done it a few times. It's backwards. Backwards in both the lighter buttons. However, ooh, out, 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 out. Too early. Will work. Yes. Excellent. Progression. Progression, progression, progression. Ooh, Juliet. A friend of mine, one of the few friends I got to play this game at all with, actually managed to pick up Juliet surprisingly quickly. Admittedly, I can't tell you whether Juliet's hard or easy. I just remember struggling really badly against him. She's sort of another Rekka character, I think? It's been ages since I played her. That looks like a Rekka thing, though. Well, that was quick. Yeah, one of the things that Daijin fighters kind of have a luxury of is that because, honestly, they're never going to be picked up tournament-wise, you're unlikely to feel that you really need to, like, you know, go quite as far as you need to in another fighter. And there's not as many videos to help you reach that point, which is bad because you're not playing the game at its full level, but at the same time, you don't feel the pressure. And I think there is something to that. Not every fighting game has to be tournament quality, especially if you're not having everyone play it. Of course, it's better to. You don't want fighters just, you know, you don't want to really love a fighter and then find it's horribly balanced, it doesn't work properly, and all that. However, I think people sometimes get a little bit too worked up that, you know, oh, the fighter isn't, you know, tournament quality. When, you know, it's really fun. Some fighters do live for casual, some fighters live for more of a training room sandbox. Like, honestly, one thing I love about Marvel is just how fun it is to tinker in training mode with. At this point, I'm finding it less and less fun to play with every time I actually boot it up. But the actual just tinkering with it, that's still great. And a lot of fighters for me do exist in more of an arcade mode context, simply because people don't play everything, which is fair enough, and honestly I don't want to have to become terribly great at all these games, but sometimes I think a lot of these games just need a little bit more than they get sometimes, and Vanguard Princess gets pretty ignored, I feel, with good reason. It's a small niche title without online play, or if it does have it, you need to go through a caster, which, you know, that's never really the most fun way to go about these things. Come on. This character we're playing against here, I cannot remember her name for the life of me. She is a very difficult character to play as. She constantly goes in and out of all these stances. That was cool. You know you have a good death when you say that was cool when you die. I'm sorry to bring up art style again. I must admit I'm not a fan of her attire. You know, I don't often like to really talk about the outfits, but hers is a little bit egregious. Okay, that's one loss. Can I win it this time? Say yes. Given how I mentioned I really love assists, you know, and how they add, you know, so much flexibility, I really should use mine slightly better. Assists also work as a great equalizing tool in a lot of ways. They make it hard to balance because obviously some characters will eventually just have better synergy with certain assists. However, they do mean that most zoning characters have both additional tools to help make their zoning work and to cover them as they zone, but rushdown characters also often gain a way to deal with zoning as they make it into these situations. Obviously, you could just remove it and it makes it much easier for both, but I think it increases a feeling, at the very least, that you can deal with it, because you just have this simple tool. You have that very clear tool. Like air dashes. You incorporate air dashes into a game, you instantly make zoning less viable. So, in order to make zoning more viable, you have to actually make zoning... You have to make zoning a lot more good. So you have to give it more air options, you have to allow fireballs from the air quite often, all these kinds of options. If you don't, you end up making it not really a viable option anymore. But if you make zoning better, you therefore negate the ease that air dashes give to zoning, I guess. But players often feel better against zoning when they can air dash, because it gives them a very easy way to get in from their appearance. And particularly helps people with lower levels, because at lower levels of these games, zoning can be very oppressive if you don't know how to deal with it. In an air dashing fighter, you're less likely to get zoning to be very oppressive. No! Going so well. Okay then. You gotta win this one. I have no clue how many matches I'm through, so I think I'm up to the boss. That did not connect. And... Come on, this is not gonna work, is it? Talking about zoning, and here we have zoning working very well against me. I must admit, as I said, I haven't really practiced much at all. Doesn't help that Vanguard Princess's training mode kind of doesn't exist. Ooh, that was a nice combo. Hit. Good. Excellent. Now, can I repeat? Will I work? Yes. I love supering on reaction to things. Feels so satisfying. Eep. Come on, you can do it. Excellent. Next round. The government. She was made by the government. This looks like a final boss. Now, I have a very simple policy on final bosses, in that they're mostly not very well designed, so I don't really bother doing them. So I'm gonna try this 2 times at most, and then give up, because I really don't see the point, because I'm not really developing anything, it's never gonna help me in a real match for the most part, and they're honestly just not a lot of fun. So let's give it a go. Oh, let's actually use the buttons with attacks on them. Skullgirls is made in Fighter Maker 2K, 3K I think. I can't think of any other games that are really well known that use it, but the My Little Pony fighting game was actually using it for a while. I played a leaked version of it a while ago and found it surprisingly good. Much better than it had any right to be, that's for sure. So This engine can do really impressive stuff. I'm not really sure what it comes with, and I've never played with it myself. But given my experience with this and the My Little Pony game, it's a pretty flexible engine. The My Little Pony game feels much more like Melty Blood might do. Melty Blood being possibly my favourite fighter. I won a round. Ooh, there's possibilities here. If I play sensibly. Which, knowing me, is not going to happen. Will it work? Yes, it will. I did it! That surprises me greatly. In fact, entirely. Translation work in this... I haven't really bothered reading the Japanese because it's a fighting game with a plot delivered, well, as you've seen. However, I don't really think it's terribly great. I don't think the script they were working with was any good to start with, though. So, the line between translation and just simply bad writing is always a difficult one. Especially when you're not going to even bother reading the original work. I'm a cheerleader. Excellent. Well, I think that's it for Vanguard Princess for today. I hope that you enjoyed my babbling as I played through. I'm not sure if I'll do this more in future or not. I'm hoping to just really practice my live talking with doing something a little bit more cerebral than a pre-rehearsed Zelda run-through. So, hope you enjoyed. Have any feedback, put it in the comments. If there's a particular Daojin fighter you wouldn't mind seeing someone play through and give some thoughts on, I'm usually more than happy to give it a tinker. At least to get through a normal arcade mode run relatively easily. Of course, the benefits of that are somewhat questionable, I guess, but some people like that. At some point, I wouldn't mind giving this commentary for matches against some friends and this kind of stuff, so you might see that at some point as well. Yeah, credits. You can find a list online. I'm sure you don't really want to watch it here. So, see ya!